I sent my boyfriend a message. This is the wedding I've been waiting 7 years for, and now you've ruined it all. I'd been in a long-distance relationship with Ethan Carter for 7 years, and I'd never waited for his proposal. Instead, during a wedding rehearsal, I found the bride-to-be holding the arm of my boyfriend. Her boyfriend can't make it today, so I'm filling in. You're the expert here. Make sure her wedding is perfect, he explained with a smile, but the loss and jealousy in his eyes were impossible to hide. Even in the end, he asked me to give her the wedding of my dreams. We have plenty of time for ours. I promise I'll come up with something better. It won't kill you to let the client have this chance, right? What he didn't know was that I'd spent a full 5 years pouring my heart and soul into making my dream wedding a reality. Later, as he wished, I waited alone for the countdown of my life. Maybe those who witness happiness are destined never to be happy themselves. The last appointment before closing was a bride who'd booked a wedding rehearsal. The client's here. Hope we can finalize this today. My assistant, Mia, sighed. The bride-to-be was extremely strict about the wedding venue. We'd churned out 5 plans in a row, and none had satisfied her. I walked over with my iPad, only to freeze when I saw the 2 people smiling and holding hands on the stage. Mia cupped her face, grinning. Not gonna lie, these 2 are stunning. No wonder she's so picky. If I married such a handsome guy one day, I'd want the best dress and the most beautiful decorations too. Our commotion caught the attention of the 2 on stage. Lila. The man's relaxed brows furrowed suddenly, and a flash of panic crossed his eyes. What's going on? Didn't you say you had to work overtime today? Why are you here? Everything in front of me made me unable to help but press him for answers. I tried to stay calm, but an inexplicable anger blazed in my chest, burning sharply. The woman beside him covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have. Never mind, I'll leave. Thank you for your help today. But Ethan grabbed her wrist, whispered a few comforting words, then walked over to me. I knew you'd misunderstand. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd get mad, he said. This is my college classmate, Sophia. Her boyfriend is abroad and can't make it back in time for the rehearsal. She asked me to fill in since we're about the same build. I frowned, studying their expressions, hesitating whether to believe him. The woman behind him stepped forward, wearing a high-end wedding dress as white as a lily, with a tear hanging from her eye, looking guilty. I'm so sorry, I didn't know you 2 were a couple. When I asked him for this favor, he said you were an independent and generous woman, so She bowed deeply, her body trembling slightly. I watched her quietly. How generous? Could any normal person be generous enough to let their boyfriend rehearse a wedding with someone else? As I stared coldly, Ethan stopped her from bowing, his tone a little annoyed. Why are you glaring at her? Blame her boyfriend. How could he miss such an important part of the wedding and make her wait? I have no idea what he's thinking. Ethan rarely got so emotional in front of outsiders. What bothered me more was the fleeting look on his face, like loss, like unwillingness. As the top wedding planner in the shop, I had to separate work from personal feelings, so I watched them walk down the aisle, hand in hand, over and over again, until she was satisfied. A sharp pain kept coming from my chest, and I had to sit down to catch my breath. Before my boyfriend left, he called out to me. She trusted you enough to come to your shop. You're the expert here. Make sure her wedding is perfect. He didn't even notice how pale my face was. It was the 7th year of my relationship with Ethan. In 7 years, I'd gone from a fledgling wedding planner to one of the most sought-after experts in the industry. But my relationship with Ethan had always stayed the same, stuck at the 7-year itch. Finally, I finished working overtime and got home, collapsing on the sofa for a nap. Then my mom called. It's almost Christmas. Will Ethan come to our house this year? Not to mention, Lila, you've been together for 7 years. Your cousin's kid is almost in kindergarten. Be honest with me. Is there something wrong between you 2? It was the same speech again. I closed my eyes, my voice tight. Nothing's wrong. I'll tell you and Dad if there's any progress. Hadn't I asked? Hadn't I urged? But the answers were always the same. You're overthinking it. I'm in a career upswing. Wait a little longer. Aren't weddings supposed to happen naturally? I promised you. Don't you trust me? If I asked again, I'd see his impatient, tired face. So we dragged it on, until 7 years passed. My thoughts swirled, mixed with the familiar suffocating feeling from the afternoon. But Mom kept rambling on the phone. You'll be 29 soon. Do you know how worried your dad and I are? We're only doing this for you. At that moment, I couldn't control my emotions anymore. They collapsed in an instant. Worried, worried, worried. What's the use of me being worried? Don't you want to know when he'll propose? Why don't you just ask him yourself? I'm exhausted every day. Can you give me a little breathing room? After shouting, I gasped for breath. The line went silent. I frowned, softening my tone. I'm just tired today, Mom. I'll handle this. I'll call you later. After hanging up, I took a handful of antacids from the table. I kept reminding myself, don't get angry. The doctor warned it would worsen my condition. After I showered, I heard the front door close. Ethan walked toward me, carrying the suit he'd worn that afternoon. Why aren't you asleep? Didn't I say I'd be working overtime a lot this end of the year? Don't wait up if it's too late. He leaned in to kiss me, but the moment he got close, I smelled a sweet, feminine scent, the same one from the woman that afternoon. I turned my head to avoid it, but he thought I was shy, laughing softly as he reached for the familiar spot. His touch made me cry out in pain. He looked confused, glancing at his hand. Why is it so hard? I stopped his hand, cold sweat dripping down my back. Don't. I'm not feeling well today. Ethan stopped, clicking his tongue in annoyance before walking to the bathroom. I picked up his shirt and compared it to the suit he'd worn that afternoon, sniffing them. I swallowed the words I'd planned to say to him that night. It was the day I'd scheduled a follow-up with my doctor. After checking in, I saw a familiar figure. Sophia looked surprised to see me too. She smiled and greeted me, but before we could say more, a man carrying 2 full plastic bags walked out from behind her. And coincidentally, it was my boyfriend, Ethan. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. Another coincidence? I laughed bitterly as he explained again. Couldn't you just help her online? Do you really have to take her to see your friend in the dermatology department? She cares about her wedding and wants her skin to look perfect that day, but she's never been to the hospital much. I was afraid she wouldn't know the process. It's just a small favor. Or have you become so jealous that you get mad if you see me with any woman, Lila? You've really changed. As the tension between us grew, the woman stepped forward to apologize again. I'm sorry, Ms. Lila, I really planned to come alone. Ethan was just being kind, afraid I couldn't handle it by myself. I'll never trouble you two again. Ethan. My heart skipped a beat. Then she asked, I know this is rude, but why are you here, Ms. Lila? I knew she was trying to ease the tension by changing the subject. Ethan looked at me, curious. What's wrong? Are you here to buy diet pills again? I forced a smile. Who needed diet pills anymore? But seeing the worried look on his face, I told him the truth. Breast hyperplasia. The doctor asked me to come for a regular follow-up. Sophia nodded. Oh, it's just a minor issue. Most women have this. Ethan relaxed, glancing at the stack of x-rays in my hand. See? You're overreacting. I'll head back now, go on. I couldn't help but call out to him as he turned to leave. You're already here. Can't you stay with me until the appointment is over? He checked his watch, his tone impatient. Lila, you didn't tell me in advance. I can't make time right now. I have a meeting waiting. Be good. I'll bring you your favorite honey tarts tonight. I opened my mouth, but didn't say anything to stop him. That night, I didn't eat the honey tarts he brought. When he wasn't looking, I threw them all in the trash. The doctor had warned me that honey was high in estrogen, and I had to eat less. If my condition got worse, even surgery next spring would be useless. So I decided to take the doctor's advice and ask my boss for a leave of absence. But the next day, Ethan found out somehow. He rushed home and asked me, why didn't you tell me you were taking time off? What about her wedding at a time like this? It turned out Sophia was still unsatisfied with the previous plans. But I was too physically and mentally exhausted to care about anyone else, so I told him the doctor's advice honestly. He softened, coming over to hug me. It's all my fault. I've been so busy with work, I never paid attention to how you were feeling. Baby, do me a favor and help with this last one? After you're done, I'll take you on vacation, I promise. Tears filled my eyes as I thought about how I'd begged him before, and he'd always made excuses about being busy. A dull pain came from my chest again. Seeing this, he carried me to the bed, put a heating pad on my chest, and massaged me gently, his face full of regret. People are always soft when they're vulnerable. I remembered when he'd chased me, vowing that he'd only ever want me as his wife. Warmth spread from my chest to my limbs. I sighed and agreed to his request. He finally smiled, the first time in a long while. Over the next 3 days, he tried to spend as much time with me as possible, like we were back in the early days of our relationship. But Sophia still wasn't interested in any of the designs I sent her. Until a week later, she told me she'd chosen a plan. She sent me a series of photos, and as I looked at them, I realized they looked familiar. This was my own wedding plan, including the dress, venue, and decorations, a European-style church. I worried someone had stolen my idea and rushed to the shop to ask. That's when I found my boyfriend there. When he saw me, he excitedly told me they'd finally decided, but I couldn't smile. I looked at him coldly and asked how he'd gotten the photos. He said he'd seen them when I left my computer on while I showered. He thought it was special, so he sent it to Sophia, and she'd loved it. I apologized to everyone, explaining that this was my personal wedding plan and wasn't for sale. My colleagues praised me, but Sophia looked like she'd lost a treasure. Her eyes were red, but she forced a smile, looking pitiful. I see. Then I won't take what's yours. I'll come to your wedding too. I mean, it's so beautiful. Her tone was filled with undisguised envy and regret. Ethan, who'd been thinking, looked at me firmly and said something I'd never forget. Lila, why don't you let her have this wedding plan? When I froze, he frowned slightly. We have plenty of time for ours. I promise I'll come up with something better. It won't kill you to let the client have this chance, right? The room went silent. I saw the shocked and sympathetic looks my colleagues gave me. Thinking back to all the signs between him and Sophia lately, I turned my head to wipe away my tears when no one was looking. Then I looked at the man who'd once said he'd always put me first and smiled. Sure. This wedding venue had appeared in my dreams countless times. It was the fruit of 5 years of revisions, countless days and nights of hard work. No one knew the details better than me. After preparing everything, we held a rehearsal with many people to check the effect. Ethan even invited his famous photographer friend, Ryan, to be there. I'd met him before. As soon as he saw me, he walked over to congratulate me. Congratulations. I knew he was planning to propose soon. He asked me where to buy a Cartier ring not long ago. Don't worry, I'll show off my skills today and make you the most beautiful bride. After hearing the last sentence, I looked at the ring on the bride's finger. It was the latest Cartier wedding ring style. I forced a smile and gestured for him to look at the stage. Under the melodious music, I felt my heart shatter into pieces, like the pink rose petals falling around us. Ryan was stunned by the sudden awkwardness. Luckily, Ethan quickly called him over, his face flushed. I faintly heard voices through the noise. Dude, that's too much. I know you can't let go, but it's all in the past. It sounded like Ryan was standing up for me. Soon the lights dimmed. Under the pure white backdrop, Sophia, now wearing a more elegant wedding dress, walked slowly with the man in the white suit. Lace and pearls made her already fair face even more beautiful. Obviously, my boyfriend was stunned too. Suspicion wrapped around my already broken heart, pulling it to the bottom. Under the soft glass light, people drank champagne and admired the wedding that would soon be held. I heard someone sigh, "It's so beautiful. It makes me want to get married too. If we didn't know he's Ms. Lila's boyfriend, we'd swear they're a couple." Some of them were Ryan's friends. Ugh, it's an old story in the circle. Everyone knows Sophia is the first love he lost. If it weren't for back then, she'd be quiet. His girlfriend is right there. I pretended not to hear, laughing along with everyone. But the forced smile finally cracked. So that's how it was. I took one last look at the fairy tale wedding, familiar yet strange. Now it felt like a knife stabbing into my chest. I held back my emotions and walked to an empty corner when no one was looking. But the tears and the sharp pain in my chest wouldn't stop. I texted my boss, saying I had to leave early. When I got to the car, I suddenly remembered the doctor's advice and patted my chest, comforting myself. Don't cry. The doctor said to stay happy. The crying and sobbing gradually stopped. I suddenly realized that God seemed to know exactly how to crush hope. I picked up the x-rays and the diagnosis report, late-stage breast cancer, from the passenger seat and read them again. I closed my eyes and accepted my fate. My fingers trembled as I typed a message on my phone and pressed send. Ethan, let's break up. When I got home, I packed my luggage quickly. But as I was about to leave, I ran into Ethan, who just opened the door. A faint sweet scent mixed with alcohol hung around him. Where are you going so late? He had no other words. He'd probably ignored my message again. I shrugged, indifferent. I reminded him to check his phone. His face turned dark when he opened it, and he rubbed his forehead, his tone accusing me of being unreasonable. You're mad just because I asked you to let her have the plan? Or are you breaking up with me to pressure me into proposing sooner? I told you. I cut him off. You're overthinking it. Proposing doesn't matter anymore. Since you're here, I'll say it to your face. This is official. I've packed everything. Let's end this amicably. Ethan grabbed my hand as I turned to leave. Fine, I'll propose now, okay? We've dragged it on long enough. If you're that eager, why did you have to make me mad? Are you happy now? I looked at his impatient face and perfunctory attitude, thinking back to the early days of our relationship. On our second anniversary, after I gave myself completely to him, he held me and kissed me all night, promising that he'd talk to his family about marriage as soon as he got a stable job. He'd said he'd give me the most unforgettable proposal, letting me say yes to being his lifelong partner in a field of white hydrangeas. Young promises are always impulsive and passionate. So many years had passed. The house had gotten bigger and bigger, but the hugs had gotten fewer and fewer. He didn't even notice the increasing number of medicine bottles on my desk. I laughed bitterly. I'm not joking. It's not necessary anymore. I should have known long ago. I'd never wait for our wedding. Before he could react, I walked out. I remembered something and turned back to remind him. Out of decency and morality, she's almost married. No matter how much you can't let go, don't interfere in their relationship. I ignored his darkening face, grabbed my suitcase, and left. I quit my job and moved back home. My parents thought Ethan and I had just had a fight. They tried to talk me into going back several times, even offering to mediate, saying they'd stop pushing us. But I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth, not just because of the grievances and Ethan's attitude, but mostly because I was afraid my parents wouldn't be able to bear the news that I had cancer. After all, Mom had surgery before and wasn't in good health. So I tried my best to be a good daughter, trying to distract them. They saw this and stopped pushing. But at night, when I passed their bedroom on my way to the bathroom, I often heard them sighing. Even though I tried not to think about Ethan and me, the emotional breakdowns at night and the occasional sharp pain from the lump in my chest made it almost impossible to sleep. 2 months passed, and Christmas arrived. When relatives came to visit, they all had questions, asking if I was still a wedding planner, how much I made a month. When my parents weren't around, I snapped at those busybodies, telling them it's none of your business. The doctor said not to hold things in. After that, it was much quieter. But some people still insisted on asking when I'd get married when my parents were home. I'm not getting married. My ex-boyfriend is dead. Everyone was shocked, and my parents hurried to explain. My heart ached. Wasn't it true? The Ethan who loved me was dead in my heart. Later, my parents took me for a walk to digest. But halfway there, I suddenly couldn't breathe. I made an excuse about a stomachache, but as soon as I got home, I threw up violently into the toilet. I noticed blood in the vomit. I was scared, and tears filled my eyes. But I was even more afraid my parents would find out, so I quickly flushed it away. Just then my phone lit up. It was a text from Ethan. You left something. The attached photo was the diagnosis report I'd forgotten in the drawer at his place. Ethan asked me to meet him at a cafe. We sat facing each other, silent for a long time. Then he cleared his throat, his voice hoarse. Is this real? When did this happen? He gestured to the crumpled diagnosis report on the table. I glanced at it and looked away, sipping my tea calmly. The doctor warned me a long time ago, but It got worse a year ago. That's when you and I were fighting because my parents were pushing for marriage. I was exhausted, dealing with both sides and work. That's when things started to change between us. I sent it to a friend to look at. He said it's serious. I smiled. You thought I was faking it to mess with you, didn't you? The warm orange light of the cafe spilled over the edge of the cup, casting an arc on the table. He stared at me, surprisingly not denying it. Did you break up with me because of this? I suddenly found it funny. What's the point of asking now? The truth is right here. Even if I didn't have cancer, I don't know how much longer I would have waited for you. I heard what your friends said that day. I thought I knew you well enough, even dared to dream of a lifetime with you. A strand of hair fell from behind my ear. I turned my head slightly, trying not to lose control. The moment you gave my dream wedding to your first love, my heart died. Selfish as you are, you're not the Ethan I loved anymore. The last sentence was almost a whisper, but I knew he heard it. The usually calm man turned pale instantly, panicking under my cold gaze. I'm completely innocent with her. I never did anything to betray you. You have to believe me. Innocent enough to smell like her for days without noticing. Innocent enough to buy her a wedding ring. I'd had enough of these empty apologies. I grabbed my bag and stood up to leave, but he suddenly blocked my way and knelt down in front of me. Lila, I know I broke your heart. I don't expect your forgiveness. I was blinded by stupidity, tricked by that woman. I just want you to let me explain. Then I heard the truth about Sophia from him. She lied to all of us. Ethan was just one of many men she'd played with. She'd booked the wedding not because she was getting married, but to make a rich playboy abroad jealous. She'd asked Ethan to rehearse with her, trying to pretend they were a couple to get the playboy's attention, hoping he'd regret it or crash the wedding. But he'd completely forgotten about her, continuing to live it up overseas. Even the wedding deposit was from the breakup fee the playboy had given her. Stealing my wedding plan was just her malicious competitiveness and vanity. If I can't be happy, no one else can, he repeated the words she'd said to him after showing her true colors. But in my eyes, they'd both hurt me equally. He stood up and sat back down, as if he'd lost all his strength, his eyes dull. He said he'd had a crush on her in the past, and they'd almost gotten together. But later, after hearing the truth from others and seeing her true face, he'd regretted it, ashamed of himself for being tempted. I listened quietly, like I was hearing a stranger's story. Then I smiled, indifferent. That's it then. Move forward. You still have a future. But I had nothing left. The doctor had said there was almost no hope. So I didn't hold out any hope either. I felt no love for him now, let alone hatred. After I said that, his face turned pale with shock. I was about to stand up when, maybe because I stood up too fast, my limbs went numb and my vision went black. I lost consciousness completely, hearing Ethan's shouts fading away. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. Ethan was sitting beside me, resting his head on the bed, fast asleep. The dark circles under his eyes were heavy. He must have been guarding me the whole time I was unconscious. But even a simple movement to turn over made my chest ache sharply. I cried out softly, waking him up. His eyes were red, but he hurried to ask where I hurt. I shook my head, relaxed my body, and lay quietly. The nurse called the doctor as soon as she saw I was awake. I described my symptoms as usual, then underwent another round of tests. As my doctor had predicted, my condition hadn't improved at all. The cancer had spread. Even surgery would only let me linger a little longer. I nodded, surprisingly calm after hearing the news. I asked the doctor to call my parents. It was time to stop hiding it from them. Hospitals are places where life and death are talked about casually, so it wasn't too sad. After the nurses left, Ethan looked like he'd lost his soul, muttering to himself, "It's all my fault. All my fault. I was with you every day, but I didn't notice the changes. I even felt something was wrong when I touched it that day, but I'm such a monster." He slapped himself hard several times, then looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. After a long while, he said, "Hit me, please. It might make me feel better." I didn't take care of you, but I stayed still, counting the time the doctor had given me. 3.5 months? That's about 100 days. It was enough to arrange my affairs and say goodbye to my family properly. But in the blink of an eye, I realized the man beside me was gone. An old lady in the next bed saw this and said in broken English, "That young man ran out just now, said he was going to get something. He saw you didn't look at him and rushed out like a gust of wind." I smiled and thanked her. Then I picked up the book in my bag, but soon fell asleep again. When I opened my eyes again, it was almost dusk. Turning my head, I saw a large bouquet of white hydrangeas in front of me. The man holding the flowers took a red velvet box out of his pocket and held it out to me. For a moment, cheers and laughter filled the small room, inconsistent with the cold hospital ward. Even a few young nurses ran into the corridor, covering their mouths and looking at me enviously. The sign on the door read, "Intensive Care Unit." How ironic. I lowered my eyes, avoiding everyone's expectant gaze, and sighed. "Ethan, why bother?" I refused Ethan's proposal, but he still persisted, staying by my side day and night, enduring everyone's sympathetic looks. I knew he was just guilty, trying to atone. When my parents came, he bought a chair and sat in the corridor. My parents didn't blame him outright, but there was some resentment in their eyes. They were also worried that seeing him would affect my mood and worsen my condition. But I just smiled, saying I didn't care anymore. He was just a stranger to me now. I knew he was at the door when I said that, but he still refused to leave. He even quit his job to help as much as he could when my parents weren't there. My parents gradually got used to his presence. At first, I stayed in the hospital on the doctor's advice. Surgery was unlikely to help, but it could prolong my life a little. My parents loved me and said they'd respect all my decisions. I didn't want to spend my last days in this cold ward. Glancing over, I saw the old lady in the next bed was gone. Only a bag of rice cereal she'd left behind sat there, before being thrown into the trash by a nurse. My heart curled into a ball. I suddenly realized I wasn't that brave. I wanted to go back to our warm little home with my family, to indulge in the last 100 days or so. But just as I was about to check out, a bearded Ethan stood in front of me, begging my parents to talk me into staying for radiation therapy. He told me not to give up hope. But memories rushed back like a tornado, and I couldn't help but sneer. Wasn't he the one who'd made me give up hope in the first place? But he refused to back down, staring at me, his eyes full of pleading. "Hate me all you want. Even let me die now. I beg you, give the people who love you a little hope." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my parents in tears, turning away to wipe them. In the end, I softened. Maybe I still clung to this world. I gave in to my parents' tears, agreeing to the radiation therapy and surgery that followed. Radiation and illness left me bedridden all day. After my proud black hair fell out from the treatment, I refused to look in the mirror. When my parents saw me like this, they always cried where I couldn't see them. I felt sad and helpless, so I often told them to go out for a walk, letting Ethan, who'd volunteered to stay, wait on me. These days, he was nothing like his old quiet, reserved self. He talked a lot, telling me the latest gossip, funny jokes he'd seen online. But I wasn't interested, lying listlessly in the ward, waiting to fade away. Seeing I didn't want to talk to him, he went back to his hospital proposal dancing routine, bringing fresh hydrangeas and the unaccepted ring to propose to me from time to time. I refused every time, but he never gave up. He even joked, it would be weird if I ever succeeded. After the last round of radiation, I had surgery. But as expected, it wasn't successful. I had only 1 week left, the doctor's final estimate. In those last few days, I asked Ethan to do me a favor. Then I sat in a wheelchair, pushed by him from the hospital to a church. This was where I wanted to hold our wedding. I'd even come here a long time ago to research it, making sure every detail of the design would be perfect. I dreamed of it all. I never thought that 3 years later, I'd come here with him in such a state. Ethan watched me walk around the church in silence, obviously guessing what I was thinking. He looked like he'd been through a serious illness too, gaunt, like a withered tree. But seeing me gain a little energy, a glimmer of light appeared in his eyes. It faded instantly, though, when he heard what I said. "I used to dream of having our wedding here," I said, talking about my old expectations, now much more at peace. Maybe that's what it's like when you're dying. You let go of everything. I smiled, showing him around, telling him where I'd planned to put our photos, where the guest sign-in boards would be, that the hydrangea clusters had to be full, the lights warm yellow to flatter people, the whole color scheme soft white, my favorite. Just like the meaning of hydrangeas, hope, loyalty, and completeness. Unfortunately, none of that applied to me now. I laughed, but stumbled and was caught by Ethan, who carried me to sit on the steps. My mind grew fuzzy. When he saw me nosebleed, he panicked and cried, saying he'd only later realized how much effort had gone into that wedding plan, how I'd poured my heart into it, and he'd given it away so easily. These days, all I'd heard was his confession. Just like me, I regretted not spending more time with my parents. Now I was going to make them bury their child. In my last days, I realized even being nagged by them was happiness. Thinking of my family, I smiled again. Finally, I forced myself to turn to Ethan and say one last thing. You didn't keep your promise, and I refused your proposal so many times. We're even now. Life still had to go on. But after I said that, Ethan covered his face and cried, his sobs echoing through the old church. I waited for a long time, but he didn't stop. So I leaned my head on his shoulder and closed my eyes to rest. Mom. Dad, I'm sorry. I felt someone shaking my body, but I couldn't open my eyes. Open your eyes and look at me, Lila. Please don't be so cruel. I'll take you back now. When he picked me up, I felt my hand go limp, hanging down. The man's steps faltered, his whole body trembling. Then he walked slowly outward. In my final moments, I heard his voice, half crying, half laughing, as if talking to himself. Lila, don't go yet. Wait for me, I'll be there soon.